for joining us on this edition of Business Daily. I'm Lee Ji-yoon in Seoul. We have a lot of stories lined up for you today, so let's get started with a look at the day's highlights. Faced with the rapidly shrinking population at home, Japanese companies are turning to Korea to find qualified candidates to fill their empty seats. We talked to an expert about the current economic ties between Korea and China as the two countries mark the 24th anniversary of establishing diplomatic ties today. These stories and more coming right up. But first, the ruling Centrist Party and the government have agreed to increase next year's budget by about 3.7%. According to the plan, the 2017 national budget will likely exceed roughly 400 trillion won, or about 357 billion US dollars, the largest ever for the country. Now, the rise mostly stems from plans to increase funds for job creation, especially for young job seekers, as well as the elderly. The government and the ruling party are also looking to allocate an extra 10% for the overall employment market next year, while pushing up the sum for youth job creation by 15% to the tune of 2.35 billion US dollars. The budget for the culture, sports, and agriculture sectors will likely also see sizable increases. Finance Minister Yoo Il-ho, who was at the meeting, urged the National Assembly to pass a multi-billion-dollar supplementary budget bill for this year. He emphasized it must be passed before an extended holiday next month to maximize the economic benefits in the second half. Korea has significantly narrowed its deficit in intellectual property trade in the first quarter on the back of technological advancements. Data from the Bank of Korea shows the country posted a deficit of $780 million in the January through March period, which was 60% less than a year earlier and the lowest since records were kept in 2010. First quarter IP exports also hit a new high at $2.8 billion, while IP imports were cut by more than 20% on year, coming in at $3.6 billion. Korea's small and medium-sized companies showed marked improvement in IP trade, notably in chemicals and pharmaceuticals, while conglomerates trimmed their IP bill in electronics by $800 million compared to last year. Global oil prices closed higher on Tuesday on hopes that major oil-producing nations will freeze their output. West Texas Intermediate for October delivery gained almost 1.5% to end at $48.10 a barrel. Brent crude closed up over 1.6% to just under $50 a barrel. This comes as Iran signaled that it may support efforts to bolster the oil market. Sources say once Iran's oil output reaches pre-sanctions levels, it will cooperate with other oil-producing nations. Now, after decades of sanctions, Iran has been stepping up production to reclaim its market share and has refused to put a cap on output. Major oil-producing countries, including Iran, will meet in Algeria next month for the International Energy Forum, where they will likely discuss measures to stabilize oil prices. Samsung Electronics is facing a global supply shortage of its Galaxy Note 7 because there are just one too many people waiting to buy its plus-size smartphone. The Korean tech giant says pre-order results for the Note 7 far exceeded its estimates, forcing them to delay the release date in some of the markets. It added that it will speed up production and try its best to meet the demand from local initial sales by the end of this month. With that, Samsung posted an apology and new pickup dates on its Korean website. Strong sales of the Note 7 are expected to help Samsung maintain its sales and earnings momentum in the second half, but shortages could pose risks to its revenue. Korea and China mark the 24th anniversary of establishing diplomatic ties today. China is Korea's biggest trade partner, and the two countries have had active exchanges in the areas of tourism, culture, and media. So what lies ahead for the two to move forward in strengthening their bilateral economic relationship? For more, we have Professor Kim Young-han from Seongkyungkwan University on the phone with us today. Hello, Professor.
Hi, good to be with you.
All right, so looking back on the 24 years of diplomatic ties, what kind of developments have we seen specifically in the field of the economy?
Well, first, in terms of the trade volume between two countries, we can observe real spectacular growth. That is, in 1992, it recorded roughly around total trade volume between two countries was roughly around $6.3 billion, and last year it has been increased almost 35 times. It's a real spectacular growth, and also in addition to those growth in terms of the trading volume and other the size of the physical economic transaction, what we can observe as another quite surprising development would be a so-called chemical integration between two economies. That is, a so-called vertical integration in terms of the fragmentation of the production or process between major industry between two countries that has been enhanced spectacularly. So currently we can say not just the trade volume, but just the kind of close chemical interactions and also complementary relationship would be one of the very kind of impressive structure of economic cooperation between two countries.
But considering that Korea does depend heavily on China when it comes to trade, there are concerns that the diplomatic spat over Seoul's THAAD deployment may spill over to other areas. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's a possible story, but however, we understand that although China has a somewhat strategic needs to kind of add the pressure in every possible way, but they also recognize that somewhat unescapable and unavoidable necessity to keep on the real strategic economic collaboration between two economies, because the industrial structure of two countries is already so closely interrelated. So we can think about some temporary kind of side effect, but eventually I would say that kind of too serious concern will not last for a long time.
So looking ahead, what more needs to be done in order for Korea and China to continue bolstering their economic relationship amid the sluggish global economy?
I think that's quite a critical question. The thing is, till now, the economic cooperation between two economies has been quite complementary in terms of South Korean economies showing some level of technological leaderships, and South China providing much more kind of well-prepared so-called production facilities, including the cheap labor force. But lately, what we can observe is almost kind of horizontal competition between two economies, with South Korean economies losing all competitive edge in leading industries. So therefore, for real sustainable economic collaboration and strategic cooperation between two economies, I think South Korean economy should rush and make every effort to recover that so-called strategic advantage, the sector of technological strategic advantages, say mainly by the further efforts in the high-tech industries where South Korean economy can provide some leaderships and some complementary cooperation between China instead of the real horizontal competition, what we can observe these days.
All right. Thank you so much for your insight today, Professor.
Thank you.
The proportion of Koreans giving birth in their late 30s is on the rise, with nearly a quarter of women who gave birth last year being 35 years or older. According to Statistics Korea, this is a 2.3 percentage point rise compared to 2 decades ago. The average age of mothers who gave birth to their first baby was 32.2 years old. The statistics agency says this is largely due to a protracted period of job searching and a following delay in marriage. With this, a majority of couples are choosing to have no more than 2 kids, leading to a fall of nearly 3% in the number of children born with 2 or more siblings. An interesting trend has emerged in a recent survey. Companies in Japan are looking to candidates here in Korea to fill their vacancies. This comes as they are struggling to find qualified workers at home in the face of a shrinking population. Our Eunice Kim takes a closer look.
An online job portal recently analyzed data on its overseas openings and found a noticeable trend out of Japan. The number of job posts from Japanese companies more than doubled in the first half of the year. Processing some 32,000 entries, Job Korea said posts from the world's third largest economy expanded by more than 109% year over year. That's 4 times faster than those from North America, where many young Koreans find employment, and 6 times faster than the overall average. It's the effect of a shrinking population. The elderly have been quickly outpacing the younger demographic, as many Japanese postpone having children or choose not to at all. In fact, data confirmed the trend in February. The national census registered nearly 1 million less Japanese in 2015 than it did 5 years earlier, the first official decline since records began in the 1920s. And it's having an impact on businesses searching for talent to grow. The ratio of open jobs to job seekers was the worst in 24 years in January at 1.28 to 1. And if we're talking the capital of Tokyo, it's even worse. 2 open jobs for every candidate. Headhunters like Robert Walters say some sectors are struggling more due to a skills mismatch.
In certain fields like, shall I say, construction, the open jobs to job seekers ratio is about 6 to 1, medical doctors about 5 to 1, engineers about 4 to 1. I've also heard of airlines cancelling flights because they can't get pilots.
Japanese firms have also grown their presence at job fairs in Korea, a country with a very different problem of double-digit youth unemployment rates.
I think more than any other time in modern history, I think the Japanese market is increasingly open to people of a foreign nationality that would like to come and work here.
Step by step, Korean youths are answering that call, particularly in IT, trade, financial services, and general office jobs. Time will tell whether it's a match that can work in the long term. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
Now, Korea's car exports have been falling, particularly to emerging countries in the Middle East and Latin America. And as the country's car makers search for more opportunities for growth, experts point to future technology. Our Lee Joo-young has more.
Korea's automobile industry has long been one of the most critical pillars for economic development in the country. But slow signs of erosion have started to emerge. According to the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy, exports of Korean vehicles have been dipping every year since 2012, falling to 3.03 million units last year. The performance so far this year has been even worse. Outbound shipments fell roughly 13.7% in the first 7 months of this year, while the total output slumped 6.2% over the same period.
Amid high uncertainties in the global financial market, low oil prices, and some movements of protectionism from other countries, the recovery in exports has been limited.
In light of these continual challenges ahead, the country's trade minister says the key to revival in the country's auto industry lies in the development of eco-friendly and autonomous vehicles. This comes as experts predict the global electric car market to grow roughly 30 to 50% annually for the next 5 years.
For the first time in a century, the paradigm of auto industry is shifting to electric self-driving cars. For the Korean auto industry to take a leap, it needs more R&D investment like other developed countries.
Local automakers have already started to move along with this change. Korea's largest carmaker Hyundai Motor is working to improve its hydrogen fuel cell technology, while Renault Samsung is set on introducing a 1-ton battery-powered commercial truck in the next 4 years. SsangYong Motor is also developing its first EV model with plans to launch it within 3 years. Meanwhile, the government is pushing ahead with plans to expand tax benefits for domestic automakers and building more charging stations for EVs, as it hopes to see a swift resurgence in the country's car sector. Lee Ju-young, Business Daily.
And that wraps it up for today. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back tomorrow with more business news that matters to you. Until then, goodbye.